Today is Palm Sunday, or Passion Sunday. The Gospel is the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 26 and 27. He gives an account of the passion and death of Jesus. Woven through his Gospel is the theme of failure. I'd like to reflect on that. Do you know anybody who's never had to face failure in their life? If the truth be told, some of our best learnings come from facing failure, and some of our biggest failures come because we weren't willing to face other failures. Peter and Judas represent two of the best known failures in history. They're both spoken of here at some length in Matthew's Gospel. Consider Judas. Judas, it is said in Matthew's Gospel, approached the religious authorities and made a proposition. I'll hand him over to you. And they said, okay. And from that moment on, he sought for ways to betray Jesus. The Greek word is interesting, translated on one occasion as hand him over, on another occasion as betray, paradidomi. It is used 10 other times in various forms in Matthew's Passion narrative, but generally translated as betray. This is the commonly perceived view of Judas's behavior. When Judas had to face his failure, he didn't experience it as promise, as a moment of grace, as an opportunity to learn and grow. Judas experienced his failure as a moment of despair. I invite you to just think about Judas's response. Why do you think Judas responded that way? Now consider Peter. Peter betrayed Jesus too. Despite his protestations earlier on, I'll not desert you. These others might, but I won't. And Jesus, we can think, looked at Peter with some kindness and compassion, said, oh, you will, you know. And Peter did. But Peter saw in his failure something else, some kind of an opportunity, a promise, a moment of grace. But rather than despairing, he was a man of hope. We might ask, why did Peter respond that way? We can get an inkling into Peter's response if we go to the Jewish scriptures, the second book of Samuel, chapter 11, where there's a rather detailed description of one of the greatest failures of history. David developed a lust for Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah. He was prepared to go to the depths of wickedness to satisfy that lust. He arranged for Uriah to be in the thick of the battle and therefore to be killed. But there's something very special spoken of in the Bible because, as Matthew points out, David and Bathsheba became integral to the lineage of the Messiah. Is it possible that the Bible says it's okay to be wicked? We can overlook that. It doesn't matter. I believe that would be an awful misrepresentation. The Bible is not about human behavior so much as it is about God's behavior, God's action. In particular, it is about God seeking to speak a word of love, of redemptive love to every person in every age, especially in the face of evil, evil that we may have chosen, or evil that we find ourselves caught up in it, even if we didn't choose it. God is everywhere. God speaks the redemptive word of love, and I think what distinguished Peter from Judas is precisely the perception that this is the truth of it. This is embedded deeply in Judaism, in the tradition of the covenant. Now, Peter may not have been aware that deep in his bones he had that intuition, an intuition that was the foundation of hope rather than despair, an intuition that said God is merciful no matter what. It made all the difference to the way he behaved, in contrast to the way Judas behaved. I leave you with the question: what is the difference? How do you interpret Peter in his response? How do you interpret Judas in his response? And you might also ponder for a moment, not in an introspective or analytical way, but how do you face failure? Do you get overwhelmed with self-disgust, self-disappointment, maybe move down the road of despair? Or is there deep in your bones, your baptized bones, the intuition that God is all merciful, no matter what?